Hello and welcome everyone. I'm your host Raja, and today in another episode of Researcher Celebrity, we have Dr. Sujata Sunil, who is group leader at International Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology, New Delhi. And she is world renowned for her work in vector-borne diseases and all those mosquitoes which give you trouble. She's the one who can tame them. And with this brief introduction, I would like to thank you, ma'am, for taking your time out for sharing your journey with our researchers all over the world. And here to you.
Thank you, Raja. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, it's a pleasure being here. And let's hope that your endeavor continues and you're able to reach more number of researchers and more youngsters are able to get inspired by our field and by the kind of work that they inspire to do.
Thank you very much for your blessings and well wishes. So let's start. We have this stage, how the interview, the conversation goes on. So with the brief introduction, how and when you get interested in science, and then when you chose that, okay, you want to do this for your lifetime.
Oh, my interest towards genetics started when in my bachelor's. I really loved genetics as a course, and it always fascinated me. DNA fascinated me. And since then, I've been trying to find ways of understanding DNA in all its varied forms. So my bachelor's, where I first was introduced to genetics, was when I really started looking at it more seriously. And after that, in my master's, again, there was a short training program where we were talking of tissue culture and tissue engineering. And there was another stint where we were trying to understand what could be the application of cloning and what we learn in our theory. That fascinated me. And after that, I pursued my research in cancer biology and with specific interest in cytogenetics. Very few people were doing hardcore cytogenetics for diagnostics back in the mid-90s. And so that was another turning point, which really brought me into using these tools to understand genetics, human genetics, and later on it spread to all kind of other genetics as well.
Nice. So you started with human genetics, and presently you are focusing on vector biology. You were interested in genetics, and now you are doing virology. So if you can share us like how this transition happened and which one you like more.
Actually speaking, I started off with plant genetics.
Okay.
I was doing plant tissue culture. And then there was this opportunity to work on human genetics in terms of cancer. Then I shifted my field from plant genetics to human genetics, looking into the molecular mechanisms of human malignancies, especially blood malignancies. So my PhD was on all kind of lymphomas and leukemias. And after that, I shifted to vector-borne diseases, where I was looking at malaria and the malarial vector. From the malarial vector, looked into hardcore, classical genetics of isolating microsatellite markers, using these like markers for studying the species in the country, and then went on to look into the genetics of the Plasmodium, and then shifted to, when in 2010, there was a major outbreak in Delhi of chikungunya virus. Then that really triggered of what could be the reason for this huge outbreak. It came in India in 2006 onwards, but it was restricted to the southern parts of India. But every year there were more and more cases that came, and that it was increasing. The spread of the disease was really very fast and very strong. You could get really huge outbreaks in various districts and various states. And by 2010, it had reached Delhi. One of the major outbreaks still date happened at that time. And that was when I was interested in knowing what could be those molecular mechanisms that would be driving these viruses to cause such huge outbreaks. Again, looking into the genetics of these viruses. And then I got some good funding from the Indian government to pursue this work. And after that, I've been working on this aspect, both the host aspect, the virus aspect, as well as the vector aspect. That is how my journey has been, from plants to humans to now viruses.
So are you planning anything out of this also, like astrophysics or, you know, something else? Because you touched almost everything. So when people talk about women in India and women in science, what are your thoughts about, like, how during this entire journey, how challenging or easy, you know, or tough it was being doing science with the community?
With me, as my personal story, I have never had a gender bias. I'm as good as any man, and I'm sure any man is hopefully as good as a woman. So having that kind of an attitude, I've never thought of any gender bias per se in science. And even if I were to look at the community, the women community in science, I really don't think this is one field where there is any biasness, because it does not involve any gender specific attributes. As long as you're passionate about your work, which has no gender bias, as long as you have the opportunities, you're willing to go out of your comfort zone, and we're willing to go that extra mile, which is anyway required for any person who wants to succeed, irrespective of their gender. So I don't think there has been any issue with respect to me being a woman to do research.
That was nicely said, and I would like to highlight this for all of our viewers and audience, that as ma'am said, this is nothing to do with gender bias. If you are ready, if you are passionate, and if you are ready to walk that extra mile, that probably will ignite more female researchers in India, and who might follow your path and touch and do almost all of the research what one can think of. So now, when you shared about your research journey, how it was when you were going to school, and how important that was, the schooling and the research, if we say, because in India, not most of the schooling is connected to research, or there is a very limited opportunity where people get introduced to research when they are still pursuing the school. So what are your thoughts about that, or your story?
There is a huge disparity by schooling in the rural areas and in the urban areas in India, at least, you know. If I'm going to keep the rural area, I'll come to that a little later. But if I'm going to talk about the urban regions, in the cities and in better placed areas of schooling, what it was, say, 30 years back, 40 years back, there is a huge difference. Even 20 years back, there's a huge difference in the way research has been showcased to students. And this I would attribute not to the schooling system, but more to the awareness the students have come up with, owing to the kind of exposure they are getting by their peers, by their the setup that they are having, and not pertaining, and they are able to do it even without the help of the school per se. The school need not come up with an agenda of introducing research, which they have also done. But the progress is so much more faster in the urban areas because it is more of a journey both by the student and by the teachers. And the hand-holding is not done only by the teachers in this case. Sometimes it's done by the students themselves. Hand-holding not only amongst their peers, but also hand-holding their teachers in this aspect, saying that, ma'am, we want to do this, or sir, we want to do this. Why are you not doing this? There are other places we can do it. And they're so stubborn, which is a very good thing because they've set up their mind and they are willing to do that, which may be that factor which may not be there in the rural areas, mainly because of lack of such an intense exposure to the students at the time. They're still depending on their teachers to tell them, to expose them to the outside world. It's not research, it's about how education is. And so they are restricted, they are to that specific set of teachers to guide them. Whereas that's not so much so in the rural state. So definitely there's been an increase, but a lot more should be happening at the policy level, which is still not being done. And that will definitely make a difference.
Okay. So when it comes about the backgrounds, like urban versus rural, we have evidence and we have like leaders coming out of like the most brilliant example I can come up at this point of time is our missile man, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. The place where he comes from, very small, very little town. He was like, very passionate about his science, and he reached he walked the path which most of the researchers either cannot think of or they are limited by some of the things. So have you faced any challenge when you made up your mind that you want to do research for rest of your life? And then sometimes, be it in initial phases about the publications, when you moved to the position where now you have your faculty position and you are doing well, then it's about the funding shortages. And when you are reviewing this, then when you are in a position like you are now group leader, I'm sure you are reviewing grants, you are reviewing papers. When you see this entire path, what do you think that is the most challenging part of research?
So when it comes to the challenging part of research, it is persistence. You can come up with wonderful ideas, and then there are, for every 100 ideas that come, executable is just a fraction of them. And when you want to execute them, the kind of assays or experimentation becomes another block. And when you do get across that also, you have funding issues. So, but if you're able to persist throughout all this journey by not thinking too big, but going small steps, there's no way you cannot perform your research. And, I know you do say for Dr. Kalam as an example, but he's 1 in a million, okay?
Yeah, that's true.
So you really cannot use that as a yardstick because there are definitely hundreds of thousands of Kalams who are still, are stuck by the what I told you, the blocks that have been coming over here. And we're talking of almost, before there, and in his times, it was a question of excelling. They want to choose the right people. Here, it is elimination these days. You are not choosing the right people. You are only eliminating on the basis of keywords. It's a thing that you have to work with the times. But that should not be a reason for why you are not doing what you want to do. That should not be a block. Just have to go ahead and keep pursuing it. Persistence is what I feel is the major blockage in research.
Yeah, I think persistence is the key for success almost anywhere, whatever you do, but it becomes more vital when you are doing research. Yeah. Okay. So talking about persistence, your word of wisdom for the researchers who are who are facing the experiments which are not working the way they want.
I can go on and on in this.
Because this is something which we want to tell our audience that, hey, sometimes something doesn't work. But when coming from, people of your attitude and your, decor, the place you come from and the authority you speak, they listen more to you. If I'll say, they might not listen, but when you say, then they'll be like, okay, now this is serious.
First and foremost, I think you should have confidence in your results. First, acknowledge there is a problem. And only when you're sure about your methodology can you troubleshoot it. Blindly doing the experiments 100 times or 10 times without actually being sure of what you have done is not going to get you anywhere. First and foremost, you need to first plan your experiments, spend the time, substantial time in planning your experiments. And once you have planned your experiment, write down everything. Everything has to be documented. You may be doing the experiment, say, a 50th time, but still record what you have done and make the changes, whatever changes you have made, because that is what is going to, actually tell what could have gone wrong. Because science and research is only about troubleshooting. Okay, nobody is going to get results the first time, and if they have got the results the first time, I'm not sure about how good the result is going to be. Nothing that comes so fast, so immediate, is good. The minute a student comes to me and says that, ma'am, first time it's worked, I will say, no, I want to check everything that you have done. And if it has worked the first time, it should work 20 more times also. Yes. That should be the robustness of your experiments. You would have seen in all this last few minutes, I've never said anything about 2-3 times. It's all 10 times, 20 times, 100 times. That is the kind of replicates. That's the number of times of experiments you must be doing every time. Once that is clear, by the end of your 100th time, you'll be able to handle any kind of troubleshooting that you can do. You will know what could have gone wrong, what you can change. And that is the key to a successful experiment. All those failures that are coming before is the only way to reach a successful completion of your experiment. So do not fret that your experiments are not working. That's the only way you can learn to do it right. Mm-hmm. It's like in cycling, you cannot learn cycling without falling down. Mm-hmm. And if you do it, your speed is going to be very high and you're definitely going to hit something really very, it's better to go have your proper breaks.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, that when your students comes and say that, okay, something worked out at the first time, and if another person or another student comes at, say, 90th time or 50th time, that this is still not working, how do you deal with these two people?
I make the person who has done the first time, do all the 60 times, or how many ever times the person who's having problems, and ensure that he's thorough with his results.
Mm-hmm.
And with the student who has failed all those 60 times, to go to each and every time he has set up the experiment and review what is that which has changed. If he has done the same thing 50 times and it has failed, then obviously he's done the wrong thing the first time itself. So we need to troubleshoot what are the various aspects. Even the water that is being used, is it fresh? Is he using the same? Everything matters, even if you're putting a small experiment, even the water matters. Yes. How fast you're putting the experiment matters. How clear you are in your mind while putting the experiment matters.
Yes.
So everything matters in here.
I think this is something which almost every researcher on the planet can, correlate, that sometimes when your head is not clear, it's like, this is not going to work. You can try anything. You might be the Nobel laureate, but you need to clear your head first before setting up all the experiments. So here about the role of a mentor, and when you see that the peers in your lab, the students, when they talk about, when they share the experiment details, because I am sure that still when students have to reach to their PI, they discuss everything among them so that they think that they can troubleshoot it. Once they think that they cannot, that's when they move to, higher authority, if I say, or I might be wrong in that. But have you seen a student who does not have this distinguishing, like this discrimination, I will say, because the PI should be the first where you should approach that, hey, I'm trying to do this, it's not working. Or you think that discussing among students which path a student should go?
It should be like, it basically depends on the environment the student is. Suppose if you are in an university setup and you're doing entirely a unique kind of work that is not being done in any other labs, then you don't have a choice but the student and the PI to, break their heads together. I mean, it's that kind of an. But if it is in an environment where there are 10 people doing similar work, it definitely, the 10 people are going to come up with 10 different ideas. At the end of the day, there's nothing called a PI or an student when it comes to experiments. I'm also learning from my student. My student is also learning from other students as well as from me. This is not, the PI's role mainly is not for only troubleshooting, but is to generate ideas, executable ideas, strategize the research. But when it comes to actual experiments, the PI is learning as much as the student. So it depends on, suppose if you're in an university or in a very small lab where you do not have access to other students, then it is the two of you. But more number of brain, definitely it's better, right? So I would be amongst my 10 students and it would be the 11 of us who are troubleshooting rather than them coming and asking me. And we all discuss all experiments together in my lab. We all do troubleshooting, and there are research talks which the students discuss their experimentation in detail, so that each and every point is being looked at and discussed about at length.
Okay. And we have seen your postings, when it is about research, this is one thing. And you take your lab to, outings and recreation. How important is that as a lab, that they can bond or they can, share what they share within the research setup and outside? Have you seen any difference in that also?
Of course. They bond better when they are outside.
Does this help with their experiments?
Definitely.
Okay.
No doubt about it.
So when you
Not
say
only
that,
in
okay,
their experiments, it helps in my thinking also.
okay, so now enough of like we can go on experiments like all the time, but now taking a pause from the experiments, when you screen a student for your lab, what are the key ingredients you look in as a person? Because on this web series where we are talking about researcher celebrities, we are focused on research, and it comes from upside down and everywhere. Like when a student is applying for, either for the PhD lab, looking for PhD lab, or for postdoc, or when it comes opposite, when a PI is looking for a PhD student or a postdoc, the strategy changes. What is your strategy when you see a CV or a resume?
First and foremost, in a student, I look for enthusiasm, willingness to learn. He or she may have a very good CV per se, but when you talk to the person and you say that, they're not enthusiastic, or they do not have that will to learn, it becomes difficult to get across my ideas, because I'm not sure that all of my ideas are going to work. There may be a chance that you must be willing to take a failure and change it and then use it the way and make it into a success. So you should be willing to learn from whatever experiments you're putting. So that is one important thing I look for. Another thing I look for is if the student has utilized his or her free time productively. Have they gone for summer trainings? Have they gone to other labs? Are they aware of what kind of research is happening around? Have they personally visited all these labs and seen? Because all said and done, nowadays everything is there. All protocols are all there in the click of a button. So I'm not looking for a very strongly, all exam cleared person, because nowadays it's not knowledge seeking. All students are only having information seeking. So what is important now is how willing they are to put this information in the right place to be successful in their, not success. I don't want any successful student. I just want an hardworking student. Success, I'll make them do it, get it.
That's your part. That's your, like, I know how to take care of that. That's very, so when you said that you take care of the success, all you need is a passionate researcher who's enthusiastic about its research. And often it has been recorded that the thought of a person, your understanding changes over time. So in first month, one person was like, enthusiastic about it and very passionate. And over the period of time, because we have seen people quitting their PhD in after 3 years, after 4 years, it is hard for the student, but I assume that it is hard for the PI also. Because what you are sending the message across the niche is both of them or one of them was not able to engage into the commitment when they committed that they want to pursue a PhD, a tenure that they will be working on the research, the questions. What are your thoughts about this?
This is a very important aspect pertaining to a young researcher's life, career life especially, It's very important for each and every person engaging in this line of career to always take a step back once in a while. It can be every month, it can be every 6 months, it can be every year, but it can be in the end of setting up a set of experiments in the end of projects, whatever it may be. But always good to take a step back and see if that is where you want to be. Most of the times the frustration sets in if you're not addressing these issues, because a small point has been irritating you, but you've chosen to ignore it and then say that, no, I'll do something else. No, address it as and when it is there. Talk about it. Not everybody is an extrovert. You can be an introvert, but you definitely, every person have their own mechanism to sort out the issues that are there. It's a personal space that you're looking at. Everybody should respect it, but do not ignore it. Then it will never come to the phase of, 3 years. You will know in the end of 3 months whether you are suited for this line of career. You may not be suited, but earlier to acknowledge it is better than to regret it and come to a situation, as you're saying, after 3 years or so, because definitely at the end of third year is not some time that you have realized. You have realized it in your third month itself, but you have failed to address it. That kind of awareness is a must, because especially in this field, this is an, self kickstarting career. Nobody can tell you or drive you. You need to have that passion to go forward. It's not a 9 to 5 job where you say that morning 9 o'clock I'll come, I'll put some experiments, 5 o'clock I leave. No, when I'm at home doing my own work, my experiments are running at the back. There are times when I've pinged up my students, and just to say that, have you done this correctly? I don't expect an answer from them. At least I've kicked their thought process to know that, yes, this is something they need to look into. And during our meetings, they can bring it up if they think that it is an issue or not.
Nice. So just briefly, we will touch on that point which you pointed out. Have you ever had an introvert student, and was it easy to communicate when you are talking about the research and the way they are feeling in the lab?
Of course. You come up with all kinds of people. I mean, for me, I give them space. I don't bug them, but I made it very clear to them that they can come to me as and when they want. That seemed to have worked well. And definitely these get-togethers help a lot in the other students also understanding that what is the way individuals are, because they meet them, they see them as individuals. Not everybody need to get along with everybody else, but you can acknowledge the fact that you're not going to get along with that person.
Yes.
Absolutely. Which may not, and they may be working together in a work scenario.
Yeah.
But once they understand that this is how the person is, the expectations become different.
True.
And that would automatically result in a better working environment between two, disconnected people.
Nice. So thank you very much for all the journey which you have shared. Now we are almost at the end of the conversation. So we want you to give some wisdom words for our enthusiastic researchers, which are all over the world and listening to your journey and your experiences. What are your suggestions for how they should pursue, what they should be worried of, and what they can just ignore while diving into the field of research?
Well, don't take yourself seriously. Just take your work seriously. Do not think you know everything. And be open to hearing new ideas. Always remember to look in from the other person's perspective, both research-wise as well as, life-wise as such. Don't take yourself seriously and enjoy your work.
Thank you very, very much for your time. And like, can I take the leverage that if any of our audience want to contact you, they can contact you directly?
Of course,
Okay.
anytime.
Thank you. And now, with permission of Dr. Sujata Sunil, you guys can just shoot any question you have. She is all over the web. You can just type her name and then her contact will be there, or we can share in the link of this video also. Thank you very much, ma'am, for giving us time and sharing your journey with Researcher Celebrity.
Thank you and good luck.
Thank you.